Good evening. Feeling a little drained this evening. Had a good day, busy day. I mean, not too busy, pleasantly busy. Uh, Started off waking up after a good night's sleep, did my Coffee with Ken show, had a good one, headed off to church, heard some music in the beginning that made me cry, which always feels good when your emotions get touched to the point of tears. I think it's probably a healthy release of something that needs released. I met with a woman who I've talked to a couple different times. She's a Bible mentor, if you will, at the church. Just kind of ran into her, and she actually gave me a book, which I might talk on about a little bit. It says Experiencing God Day by Day, and they're little, I don't know, one-page things to read each day with biblical meaning or intent or something. I haven't started reading it yet. And I listened to the sermon, and I must say, believe me, I don't want to feel this way, but I'm looking at my own faith in a different manner than I did 5 months ago before I started reading the Bible. When I told the people at my church that I started reading the Bible, most of them told me to skip the Old Testament. I don't know why that would be, but I was told by many people to start at the New Testament. And I read through the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, and started reading Joshua. Genesis, Exodus, and I don't remember if Numbers or Leviticus came next. We'll just say Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then Joshua, which is the 6th book. And I got halfway through the 6th book of the Old Testament. I just couldn't stand it anymore. There was so much violence and grossness and anger and hatred and killing and looting and, in my mind, rape. Not only condoned, but commanded by God in the Bible, in the Old Testament. And I just couldn't stand it anymore. It was either boring as heck or vicious as heck, and neither of which I thought connected me to my faith in any way. So after about 3 or 4 months of reading 2 chapters every night to you, I said, okay, well, I'm just gonna put this down and start at the New Testament. And it's been a lot lighter reading and better feeling and warmer and fuzzier, but I still got this sinking feeling that something's not right, and something's not right, and I'm looking at faith differently. And honestly, I was sitting in the front row today at church. I was in this mega church. There's probably 1,000 people in there, and my pastor Brian, who I like a lot, was talking and reading excerpts from the Old Testament. But honestly, I wanted to raise my hand and go, but Brian, you're really picking and choosing from these passages. There's whole books of genocide and slaughter and butchery that you never mention. And why is that? So I'm open with my questioning, and the woman that I met before, who's a Bible mentor, sent me a YouTube video about this very subject, about how violent and genocidal that the Old Testament is. And in my mind, if I don't understand why Christians gloss over the butchery that is all over the Old Testament, and the incest and rape and genocide all over the Old Testament. If you haven't read it, you probably shouldn't. But if you do, I think you're going to find the same experience as me. Either kind of glossed over or told that I'm reading it wrong or I'm misinterpreting it. I find that almost offensive, to be honest with you. I'm just going to let it all hang out. And I was watching this video about some expert who was saying why the genocide wasn't really as bad as it should have been. And he said it was hyperbole or exaggeration or this or that. And to me, and I had a born-again Christian sister who passed earlier this year from breast cancer. To me, she held every word of the Bible as sacred and believed every word was true. And I think if you are a true devout Christian, that is what you are supposed to believe. And I'm not telling you what to believe, I'm just saying that's what I always thought. So if you're going to start saying, well, the Bible says to kill every man, woman, and child in these basic towns, and then I have somebody telling me, well, that was just hyperbole. I wonder where the hyperbole begins and ends. Was the flooding of the world hyperbole? Is God himself hyperbole? And these are the thoughts I have going. And I reached out and kind of touched base with the woman that gave me this book today, who's a Bible mentor. And she told me, well, the scholars look at it this way. And you need to frame it this way. And I'm just wondering, am I supposed to interpret this with my own brain that God has given me and the eyes that God has blessed me with? Or am I supposed to believe, because if I'm having to interpret it through the scholars or some framing of some other person's opinions, I'm no longer reading God's words. I need them explained to me. And from my point of view, that just will not fly. And repeatedly, I'm being told, well, don't read this. The scholars look at it this way. This was just hyperbole. The whole foundation, in my mind, for Christianity is crumbling. And this, I'm not telling you what to believe at all. But I'm saying I might not be a Christian at all. Because the foundation for my belief in Christianity is now being forced to be viewed through the words and messages of scholars and dudes on YouTube that are saying, well, don't believe that, that was just hyperbole. Or, hey, the Canaanites or the Amorites or the Hittites were really bad dudes and they had it coming. But either way, again, to me, I look at it as rationalization for genocide that we have seen throughout history. I'm sure Stalin thought there were a lot of good reasons to starve out millions and millions of Ukrainians. Genghis Khan probably thought there were good reasons to slaughter every city he came upon. And I won't even bring up the most notorious dictator of the 20th century and for what he did. But I'm sure in his mind he had a lot of good rationale reasons for doing it too. And the more I hear of this rationalization for genocide, and in my mind, clearly rape. If you read Deuteronomy chapter 20 and chapter 21, they talk of taking the women as plunder and spoils for war and enjoying those spoils as you see fit. So, given all that introduction, which is longer, and I want you guys to believe whatever it is you want to believe. But this is my show, and to tell you what the Bible mentor told me to believe, or to tell you that the scholars look at it this way, or that some dude on YouTube told me it was really just hyperbole, would not be doing my show justice. I'm going to tell you what I'm reading and what I'm seeing and what I'm believing, and you can tune me off or unsubscribe or do whatever the heck you want, because I honestly want you to believe what you want to believe. But the more I dig into this issue of the butchery, calling it hyperbole shakes my foundation for the faith that I never really called myself a Christian, so take that. I want you to understand that. But I still go to a Christian church. I still sat in the front row, and I still cried today at the service. Not at the service, at the words and the singing and the goodness I felt. But I think there's something that doesn't add up in my mind at all in the Old Testament, and makes me question the New Testament. That being said, I am going to read to you. Kenneth McCaldwell said, John 15:13, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. No, I love that passage. That's a beautiful passage. But I haven't read John 15:13. I've read Genesis. I have read Exodus. I have read Leviticus. I have read Numbers, Deuteronomy, and half of Joshua, and now half of Matthew. And given that amount of reading, and I'm telling you, when you read it like I am, live to an audience, and you're forced to read every word, I think it even becomes more painful. Because I tried to read this just to myself, and I go, boring paragraph, I'll just skip through this. More just endless details of the plot lines of various tribes get, I'll just skip this. Oh, just endless details of donation or of sacrifices to the Lord our God, I'll just skip the details. But I am forced because I'm reading it to you live, to read every word. And I'll bet you, even my Bible mentor and even some of the scholars probably just kind of slide on down various paragraphs. That's how bad I think the Old Testament is. However, again, I encourage you to draw your own conclusions. And I brought up Deuteronomy. If you want to read chapter 20 and 21 from the book of Deuteronomy and say there's anything good in it, or while I'm at it, Numbers chapter 7. Numbers chapter 7 will just bore the crap out of you. And Deuteronomy chapter 20 and 21, you feel like you're reading, again, I don't want to bring up any thing that is still too fresh in our minds, but I'm just telling you, it's genocide and it's rape. So given that long introduction, I am going to read to you from the book of Matthew. And I got to find it in here because I was... the book of Matthew. 10. I read 10 and 11 last night or 2 nights ago. I'm going to read to you from the book of Matthew, chapter 12, and chapter 13, which look kind of long, so this is going to be a long one. I apologize for it being a little long tonight, but I wanted to say that because, again, if I don't tell you how I feel I'm doing what this platform's meant to be, what Coffee with Ken's all about. So chapter 12, Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath. He said to them, have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and those who were with him? How he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which it was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests? Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. And I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on this. I've been doing this for a while, and as I've talked about this issue repeatedly, it brings up how Jesus is here to uphold the law, not to abolish it. And I'm not sure if that's a direct quote. But I'm going to call BS on that. To me, what Jesus just told the Pharisees is, despite the obvious statements in the law of Moses, not to work on Sundays and not to do various things, Jesus seems to be saying, in my mind, in a pinch, you do what you got to do. A man with a withered hand. He went on from there and entered their synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. And they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So that they might accuse him. He said to them, which one of you who has a sheep, if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not take hold of it and lift it out? Of how much more value is a man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And the man stretched it out, and it was restored, healthy like the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, how to destroy him. God's chosen servant. Jesus, aware of this, withdrew from there, and many followed him. And he healed them all and ordered them not to make him known. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Behold, my servant who I have chosen, my beloved with whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will not quarrel or cry aloud, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break. In a smoldering wick he will not quench, until he brings justice to victory, and in his name the Gentiles will hope. Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Then a demon-oppressed man who was blind and mute was brought to him, and he healed him, so that the man spoke and saw. And all the people were amazed and said, can this be the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, it is only Beelzebul, the prince of demons, that this man casts out demons. Knowing their thoughts, he said to them, every kingdom divided itself against itself is laid waste, and no city or house divided against itself will stand. And if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand? And if I cast out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your sons cast them out? Therefore they will be your judges. But if it is by the Spirit of God that I cast out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. Or how can someone enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods, unless he first binds the strong man? Then indeed he may plunder his house. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Therefore I tell you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven people, but the blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven. And whoever speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven. But whoever speaks against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either in this age or in the age to come. A tree is known by its fruit. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. The good person out of his good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth evil. I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. The sign of Jonah. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered him, saying, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. But he answered them, An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And behold, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, something greater than Solomon is here. Return of an unclean spirit. When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places, seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept and put in order. Then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits, more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first. So also will it be with this evil generation. Jesus' mother and brothers. While he was still speaking to the people, behold, his mother and his brothers stood outside, asking to speak to him. But he replied to the man who told him, Who is my mother, and who are my brothers? And, stretching out his hand toward his disciples, he said, Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Chapter 13, the parable of the sower. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow, and he sowed. Some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. The purpose of the parables. Then the disciples came and said to him, Why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered them, To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. Indeed, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled that says, You will indeed hear, but never understand, and you will indeed see, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and when their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For truly I say to you,
Many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it. The parable of the sower explained. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. As for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields. In one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. The parable of the weeds. He put another parable before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, when the weeds appeared also, and the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? He said to them, an enemy has done this. So the servants said to him, then do you want us to go and gather them? But he said, no, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. The mustard seed and the leaven. He puts another parable before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed that a man took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it has grown, it is larger than all the garden plants and become a tree. And that the birds of the air come and make nests in the branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. Prophecy and parables. All these things Jesus said to the crowds in parables. Indeed, he said nothing to them without a parable. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter what has been hidden since the foundation of the world. The parable of the weeds explained. Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples came to him, saying, explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out his kingdom, all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. The parable of the hidden treasure. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. The parable of the pearl of great value. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value went and sold all that he had and bought it. The parable of the net. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and gathered fish of every kind. When it was full, men drew it ashore and sat down and sorted the good into containers, but threw away the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. New and old treasures. Have you understood all these things? They said to him, yes. And he said to them, therefore every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who brings out the treasure, what is new and what is old. Jesus rejected at Nazareth. And when Jesus had finished these parables, he went away from there. And coming to his hometown, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? And are not all his sisters with us? When did this man get all these things? And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household. And he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Again, those were a couple pretty long chapters tonight. I'm going to leave you with that without me, throwing my 2 cents in at all. I think I did enough of that at the beginning. But I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight for some thoughts and reading of 2 chapters from the book of Matthew. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Hope you're excited about tomorrow, but not too far ahead. You're living in the moment. You are feeling good. You are loving yourself. You are forgiving yourself. And as always, I hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.